On the 16th of October, 1793, a woman with prematurely white hair was led through the streets of Paris in an open wooden cart. Just a few years earlier, she had been the most glamorous, most envied queen in the entire world, draped in silk, dripping in diamonds, worshipped like a living jewel. Now she sat in a rough cart, dressed in a plain white gown, her hands bound behind her back, as a screaming mob spat at her and hurled insults. Within the hour, she would kneel before a blood-soaked blade, and the crowd would roar with joy as the most famous queen in history lost her head. But here's the truth almost nobody tells you. Marie Antoinette was not the villain that history made her out to be. In fact, almost everything you think you know about her is wrong. That famous line, "Let them eat cake," the cruel words that supposedly proved how heartless she was, she never actually said them. The scandalous diamond necklace that destroyed her reputation? She was completely innocent. She was framed. And the secret hidden inside her royal marriage for 7 long years? It was so strange that it nearly caused an international crisis. She was sent to a foreign country at just 14 years old. She was blamed for a revolution she didn't start. She watched her husband executed, was torn away from her children, and was put on trial with monstrous lies invented purely to destroy her. And after her death, one final mystery remained. Her little son vanished into a prison cell. And to this day, people have argued about what really happened to him. So stay with me all the way to the end, because this story will completely change how you see her. This is Histalgia, where history comes alive. And over the next 20 minutes, we're uncovering the untold story of Marie Antoinette, her secret life, the scandals that framed her, her tragic fall, and the mystery she left behind. To understand her tragedy, you have to understand how it began, because Marie Antoinette never even chose this life. It was chosen for her. She wasn't French at all. She was born an Austrian princess in the glittering courts of Vienna, the youngest daughter of one of the most powerful women in Europe. And from the moment she was born, she was treated less like a child and more like a bargaining chip, a piece to be traded in the dangerous game of royal politics. For centuries, France and Austria had been bitter enemies, so to seal a fragile new alliance between the two great powers, a marriage was arranged. Marie Antoinette, just 14 years old, would be sent to France to marry the future king. A teenage girl was expected to hold 2 empires together with nothing but a wedding ring. Imagine that for a moment. You're 14. You're taken from your home, your family, and everything you've ever known. You're stripped of your Austrian clothes at the border to symbolically become French. And you're handed over to marry a shy, awkward boy you have never met in a foreign country that already views you with suspicion. How would you feel walking into that palace knowing every single eye was watching, waiting for you to fail? And here is where the first secret comes in. Her new husband, the future King Louis XVI, was a kind but painfully awkward young man, far more interested in hunting and tinkering with locks than in his beautiful young bride. Their marriage remained unconsummated, not for months, but for years. 7 long years passed with no royal child. And in a royal court, that was a catastrophe. Whispers spread. Ambassadors wrote letters. Her own mother sent her scolding messages from Vienna. The pressure on this young woman was crushing, and it was only just beginning. In 1774, everything changed. The old king died, and overnight, Marie Antoinette, still a teenager, just 18 years old, became the Queen of France. She was now the most important woman in one of the richest, most powerful kingdoms on earth, and she stepped into a world of almost unimaginable luxury, the Palace of Versailles. Picture endless halls of mirrors and gold, thousands of servants, glittering parties that lasted until dawn, and gardens so vast they seemed to stretch forever. For a young woman who had felt trapped and judged for years, this new world of pleasure and freedom was intoxicating, and she embraced it completely. She became the ultimate trendsetter of her age. She wore towering, elaborate hairstyles so tall they became legendary. She spent staggering fortunes on gowns, jewels, and gambling. She built herself a private retreat on the palace grounds, a place where she could escape the suffocating rules of court and live in her own perfect little world. But here's the problem, and it's the beating heart of her downfall. While the queen was spending fortunes on silk and diamonds inside her golden bubble, outside those palace walls, France was starving. The country was drowning in debt. The price of bread was soaring. Ordinary people were desperate, hungry, and angry, and they needed someone to blame, so they blamed her. They gave her cruel nicknames, calling her Madame Deficit, the woman draining France dry. To the suffering people of France, she became a symbol of everything that was rotten about the monarchy. A foreign queen, wasting their money while their children went hungry. So let me ask you this. Was Marie Antoinette truly the reckless villain they claimed? Or was she a sheltered young woman, raised inside a bubble, who simply never understood the suffering happening just beyond her palace gates? Tell me what you think in the comments. Because the deeper we go, the more complicated she becomes. Now let's destroy the biggest myth of all. Because if you know one thing about Marie Antoinette, it's probably this phrase, "Let them eat cake." The story goes that when she was told the poor people had no bread to eat, she coldly replied, "Then let them eat cake," proving she was heartless and out of touch. But here's the truth. There is no real evidence she ever said it. None. The phrase actually appeared in writing before she was even old enough to have said it. And it was likely attached to her years later by her enemies to make her look cruel. It was propaganda, a lie designed to turn the people against her. And it worked so well that people still believe it more than 200 years later. Think about that. One fake sentence helped bring down a queen, but the myth wasn't the worst of it. The event that truly shattered her reputation was something called the affair of the diamond necklace. And the cruelest part? She was completely innocent. Here's what happened. A group of con artists cooked up an elaborate scheme involving an outrageously expensive diamond necklace, one of the most valuable pieces of jewelry in the world. Using forged letters and an impersonator, they tricked a powerful cardinal into believing the queen secretly wanted him to buy the necklace on her behalf. He handed it over. The schemers vanished with the diamonds. And when the fraud finally exploded into public scandal, whose name was dragged through the mud? Marie Antoinette's, even though she had nothing to do with it. Even though she was the victim of the scheme, not the mastermind. The damage was done. The public was now convinced that their queen was a greedy, scheming woman obsessed with jewels. In their minds, the necklace proved everything they already wanted to believe about her. Her reputation never recovered. And France was now sliding toward an explosion. In 1789, that explosion finally came. The people of France, crushed by hunger, debt, and centuries of inequality, rose up in one of the most world-changing events in all of history, the French Revolution. The fury of the people boiled over. In Paris, a mob stormed a hated royal prison fortress, and the country descended into chaos. The old world of kings and queens was crumbling, and Marie Antoinette and her family were standing right at the center of the storm. Then came a terrifying night. Thousands of furious Parisians, many of them women, enraged over the lack of bread, marched all the way to the Palace of Versailles. They broke into the palace grounds. Some of them were reportedly hunting for the queen herself, screaming for her death. Marie Antoinette had to flee through secret passages in the middle of the night to survive. By morning, the royal family was no longer safe in their glittering palace. The mob forced them to leave Versailles forever and dragged them back to Paris, where they would essentially become prisoners of the revolution. Picture the fear. You were once a queen worshipped by the entire kingdom. Now an angry crowd wants your head, and you're being marched to a city that hates you, unsure if you'll live to see the next week. And so the family made a desperate decision, one that would seal their fate. In 1791, in the dead of night, they attempted to secretly escape France in disguise, hoping to reach loyal supporters near the border and rally help. It was a bold, dangerous gamble, and it failed. The royal family was recognized, stopped in a town called Varennes, and hauled back to Paris under guard. That failed escape was the point of no return. In the eyes of the revolutionaries, the king and queen had just tried to abandon and betray their own people. Whatever sympathy remained for them evaporated. From that moment on, there was almost no way out. Everything now collapsed with terrifying speed. The monarchy that had ruled France for over 1,000 years was abolished. The royal family was locked away in a grim tower prison. And Marie Antoinette, once the queen of the most powerful court in Europe, was now simply a prisoner awaiting an uncertain and terrifying fate. Then came the blow that broke her heart. In January of 1793, her husband, King Louis XVI, was put on trial, condemned, and executed. He was marched to a public square and beheaded by the guillotine in front of a massive crowd. Marie Antoinette was now a widow, alone, imprisoned, and grieving, with her children still by her side as her only comfort, but even that comfort would be ripped away. In one of the cruelest acts of the entire ordeal, her young son, her little boy, was forcibly taken from her arms and placed in the hands of his captors, held in another part of the prison. Witnesses described her anguish as unbearable. She reportedly spent hours just trying to catch a glimpse of him through a tower window. Imagine the pain. Losing your husband, your crown, your freedom, and then having your own child torn away, all within months. She was moved to a cold, bare cell and watched day and night. Her health failed, her hair turned white. The glamorous young queen the world had envied was gone, and in her place was a broken, grieving mother, waiting for the end she surely knew was coming. If this story is moving you, take 1 second right now and hit that subscribe button. Here on Histalgia, this is exactly what we do. We bring history's most unforgettable human stories back to life. And trust me, you'll want to be here for the ending. In October of 1793, Marie Antoinette was finally put on trial. But this was no fair trial. It was a performance, an event designed to condemn her no matter what she said. She was accused of a long list of crimes: draining France's treasury, plotting with foreign enemies, betraying the nation. And her accusers went even further, inventing monstrous and utterly false charges against her. Grotesque lies with no basis in truth, created for the sole purpose of destroying whatever dignity she had left and turning the public completely against her. And here is where Marie Antoinette showed a strength that surprised even her enemies. Faced with these vile accusations, she defended herself with a calm and quiet dignity. When one especially cruel and false charge involving her son was thrown at her, she reportedly refused to dignify it, instead appealing directly to every mother in the room. For a moment, even some of the hostile crowd was said to be moved. But it didn't matter. The verdict had been decided before the trial ever began. She was condemned to death. On the morning of October 16th, 1793, her hair was cut short, her hands were bound, and she was placed in that open cart and paraded through the streets to the guillotine. The woman who once traveled in gilded carriages now rolled toward her death on rough wooden wheels, past crowds who had come to watch her die. And in her final moments, she remained composed. As she climbed the steps to the scaffold, she accidentally stepped on the executioner's foot. Her last recorded words were not a curse or a plea, but a simple, gracious apology. "Pardon me, sir. I did not mean to do it." Moments later, the blade fell. Marie Antoinette was dead at just 37 years old. So I'll ask you honestly, now that you've heard the full story, did she deserve this fate? Was she a villain, a victim, or simply a young woman crushed by forces far bigger than herself? Let me know in the comments. I read every single one, but her story doesn't quite end at the guillotine. Because there is one final haunting mystery, and it's about her little boy. After Marie Antoinette's death, her young son, the child who had been torn from her arms, remained locked away in that grim prison. Officially, history records that he grew sick and died in his cell just 2 years later, alone at only 10 years old. But almost immediately, whispers began. Rumors spread that the sickly boy who died was not really the prince at all, that the real young royal had been secretly smuggled out of the prison and replaced, and that he had escaped to live in hiding. For the next 200 years, this mystery refused to die. Dozens of men across Europe stepped forward over the decades, each one claiming to be the lost prince, the rightful heir who had somehow survived. Was it possible? Had the little boy truly escaped? Or did he really die forgotten in that cold cell? The mystery was so powerful that it lasted for 2 centuries, until modern science was finally able to weigh in and study the remains, bringing the world its long-awaited answer. And yet, even now, the legend of the lost prince endures, a final tragic echo of a family destroyed by revolution. When Marie Antoinette died, an entire era died with her. She became one of history's most misunderstood figures, remembered for a cruel phrase she never spoke, blamed for a scandal she never committed, and cast as a villain when the truth was far more human and far more tragic. A teenage girl handed an impossible role who lost everything, and who faced her terrible end with a dignity that even her enemies could not deny. If you enjoyed this untold story, do me one last favor and hit that subscribe button, because here on Histalgia, we bring the greatest and most unforgettable stories of the past back to life, one incredible tale at a time. And I promise you, you do not want to miss the next one, and now it's your turn. Whose story should I tell next? A doomed king? A daring escape? A mystery that history never solved? Comment down below with the person or event you want to see. And if I choose your idea, your requested story could be the very next video here on Histalgia. Thank you so much for watching. This has been Histalgia, and I'll see you in the next story.